Hello, hey guys, how's everyone doing? Just before we make a start, can someone give me the all clear that all the audio is good for you to hear, and then we'll make a start. Got some questions coming in already, which is great. You have me for 1 hour for an exclusive Q&A on compression. Great, thanks guys for confirming that. That's great. So how's everyone doing? Welcome to this live stream, which is a compression Q&A for our brand new course all around compression. So the course is designed to help beginners through to advanced mixing engineers learn about compression, how to implement it, how to use it, creative strategies, and learning just all of the little bits of terminology that seem to make it sort of mythical, the whole concept, because I think if you break it down in really simple layman's terms, compression isn't that complicated at all. I think it can be overly complicated. So if you have any questions at all, today is the day to get them in. Already got some here, which is great. The course is live now, I believe, on the website, and I also believe I think there's an intro discount as well on the course. Forgive me if I'm wrong there, but I did check it beforehand. So yeah, we have some questions that we've already got today from some of the ADSR people on multiple sources. If you want to participate in more stuff like this, head over to our Discord and yeah, get the comments coming in. I'm just going to run the really short intro for the course and come straight back to you, and then we'll make a start. So just to give you a rough outline of what the course entails. Hi, this is Brent March with ADSR, and in this course we're going to be learning all about compression. We're going to be looking at a lot of different types of compressors, and we're going to be learning about the functionality and all the controls, how to learn them, how to utilize them, and most importantly, how to implement compression and when not to use compression. We'll be taking a look at lots of different types of compressors, from FET through to optical, as well as multiband compression, upward compression, and even mid-side compression. So this course goes right from beginner through to some quite advanced compression techniques. So if it sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned and learn the rest of the course with me, your host, Brent March. So there you go, there's the course. If you want to find out more, please head over to the link that is in the chat. So without further ado, let's get into some of your questions. So Bob Acid asks, SSL compressors, best just for bus comp or what else? Good question, Bob. For me personally, I use them, like you say, I use SSL stuff mostly for bus compression. And the reason for that is because of the sort of color and the character that they imprint onto the sound of a group of instruments. If I'm going to do individual compression on individual channels, I might use something which is a little bit more, I can maybe refine things and see stuff with an actual display, something like FabFilter Pro C2. So we can start looking at stuff like that. Let me just change my big cam and go to Studio One. So if you just tuned in, no, it's not a Monday, it is a Sunday, although we will be here tomorrow for our sound design sessions, but this is all about our new compression course. So let me just turn on camera number 2 and we'll start to answer some of these questions. So yeah, so to answer your question, Bob Acid, SSL compressors, I would typically, for example, here's a group of tracks here. And my go-to with this would be to basically treat individual samples if necessary. That's a huge part of the course, is do you actually need to use compression on pre-treated samples, stuff that sound designers have already worked on, etc. So that's a thing that people don't ask themselves enough. They just whack a compressor on everything. And then what I do is I'd group these together, and I would probably use an SSL. In fact, I've got an SSL Townhouse compressor on my mix bus output. So hopefully that answers your question. Sorry if I pronounce your names wrong here, by the way. Chan Kong Jai, a question in advance. Does attack and release really matter? I can't hear the difference of different release, especially. Long attack and short release is a vintage sound. Is that true? Interesting. Good question again. I think that attack and release definitely does matter. And if you want to hear I find that because a lot of these things in compression are quite nuanced, but they make a big impact down the line. So what I mean by that is it's lots of small decisions that end up making a really big impact once it's at the end. So for example, if you have multiple things that you've got a compressor on, and then later on your gain staging starts building up and you put yourself into a bus compressor, little things like attack and release times on individual channels will have probably made a big difference, but you've got to really tune your ear to them and learn them. And that's the thing with compression. You've just got to learn to hear it and hear what works best for the sample that you're working with. But yeah, attack and release definitely makes a big difference. Especially it makes the most difference on transient heavy material. So snares, percussion, vocals, and I'll show you a good example as to how the attack and release makes a big difference. It also is worth mentioning that I would usually always back off the compressor in parallel, so I hardly ever use a compressor unless I'm importing it as like an absolute sound design thing. Hardly ever use it as an actual full insert. I'll back it off and mix it in parallel. So again, hope that answers your question, and I'll have an example to illustrate the point further. Does anybody compress filter sweeps? That's a really interesting one, Chris. Again, from other people's experience, I'm not entirely sure. I think on a filter sweep they might use I could imagine people using multiband compression, probably the most likely form of compression there, because of the waveform and the way that it is actually sweeping through the EQ, the spectrum. There's no need to compress all of it. You maybe just need to compress certain amounts, and again in parallel. Another question from Tian. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Can I do 50% wet compression in Filter Pro C2 for the parallel compression, or have to use busing? Good question. So even 5, 6, 7 years ago, everything had to be bussed in if people aren't familiar with the terminology, we go over this a lot in the course. So there's a lot more info on the course. I'm just going to be really just touching on these subjects here. But yes, you can use Pro C2 and blend it in dry wet in parallel again. And if you don't know what I mean by parallel compression, you can learn all about that in the course. We've got a chapter completely, I think we've got multiple chapters dedicated to it actually. And yes, you can do it with Pro C2. The busing would be if we send these channels here to what we call a bus, and then basically we can use a bus and add maybe an auxiliary track onto it to blend the levels, so we get a little bit of the original and a little bit of like maybe a compressed one. But pretty much all good tools now have got a dry wet mix blend. So for example, so here's this FabFilter Pro C2. I'll just make the display a bit larger for you guys. There you go. The dry wet is basically here. This is your mix control. This is also the bypass button if your DAW doesn't have bypass. And here's where you can dry wet. And if you want to learn the benefits of why you should be using parallel and how to use it, check out the course for sure, because there's a lot more on that. Hope that answers your question. From Twitch, no excess. A lot of drum samples have a lot of compression treatment already. Absolutely. Extremely good and valid point there. So a lot of modern production is you're already working with treated samples. So if we're talking about, say for example, ADSR, we sell we sell tens of thousands, and in fact probably into hundreds of thousands of samples, and they've all been curated by either a team or a sound designer. And I can pretty much guarantee you that those sound designers, if they've done their job correctly, they will have treated the samples so that when you drop them into your session, they already sound pretty good. A very common thing with samples is the samples get normalized, so they're hitting unity gain, so they're hitting 0, which can be a little bit like, whoa, why are these samples so loud? But it's just to give you the maximum headroom. And digitally, gain is completely adjustable, so headroom doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is gain staging and deciding, do you actually need to use compression? So an extremely valid point is sometimes you don't need to learn sometimes you don't need to use and implement compression, but the tricky thing is learning when don't I need to use it and when do I need to use it? And again, that was one of the main things I want to focus on in the course is I feel like a lot of people absolutely obliterate their great music because they overly compress. If anything, I find that people maybe use compression too much, destroys the transients. And it ruins, it's still good, even though the whole concept of compression is to level out the dynamics of a performance. It's still good to have dynamics, of course. We don't want to just have a completely flat, flat sound source. So otherwise there's no energy, is there? So to answer sort of, I know that's not necessarily a question, but yeah, you do not need to always use compression. And it's hard to identify when you don't need to, but there is a lot of ways you can learn it visually and orally. And again, chapters of this in the course if you'd like to learn more about that. Okay, is it sometimes an option not to use it on those samples, or does it always need to be done again to fit the final mix? Oh, I think this might come from the same person on Twitch, perhaps. Is it sometimes an option to not to use it on those? Absolutely, yeah. So in an instance where maybe you don't need to use compression, the main thing is outline what do you need to use compression or do you not need to use compression. And then typically what I do is if I find like if I've got some samples that are from from ADSR, or for example that maybe they come out of basically a sample library in Contact or XLN Audio's Addictive Drums, just as an example. They've already been treated, they've been done by a great sound design team and developers. I won't treat the individuals, but I'll probably more than likely do a bus stuff. So, for example, some of these here are from a sample pack, and I can guarantee you again, they've already been treated, so they don't need to all have a compressor on each channel. I can tell you now, if I did that, I would ruin the sound of the mix, I'd ruin the sound of these drums, I'd ruin the sound of everything. That's not to say that none of this needs compression, but I already know that my instincts tell me orally, visually, stuff like that, it's not necessary on maybe this one, etc., etc. So what I would do is, to answer your question there, no excess, I would maybe sum these to a bus and then apply some form of bus compression, and then I would maybe dial in thresholds, ratios, etc. And again, there's a chapter in the course that's all dedicated to working with pre-treated samples which don't require compression, but how do you fit them into the mix? Because you've got to make everything feel cohesive when you're mixing. So hopefully that answered your question. Hey LA, how you doing? Nice to see you. Devil Lock Deluxe is the smasher. It absolutely is. If anyone hasn't got that, that's got like a really cool compression circuit built into basically a really sort of heavy-handed distortion unit. How complex do people find compression to not understand it? What am I missing? It's a good point, Dave. Maybe you're more experienced and maybe you've been around the block when it comes to mixing, but I think for some people who maybe have a different, it's definitely less traditional now. You don't come up in the studio and shadow as much as the opportunities used to be, but at the same time, the resources that are available online with stuff like courses, YouTube, we have these live streams all the time on ADSR for free. I think you can learn a lot, and this is just to try and help people understand the basics right through to advanced stuff. Like we end up covering mid-side compression, which is more for mastering, but we cover quite a broad spectrum in the course. Yeah, a lot of people ask about vocals, how to tame a vocal which is too dynamic. Got a fairly good example for that today to show you guys. Pretty much anything that's been recorded from an analog source needs some treatment. Yep, I would agree with you for the most part there, for sure. Concepts are simple, but the practice, it's mainly, I think, people, if they are... it's good to learn about things, but you need to put them into practice. If you guys are new here, every Monday, and tomorrow night I host on the channel a sound design sessions live stream, and I always try and reiterate that's really important. You go in, you don't just watch and be like, oh yeah, that was a great sound that you did. You got to go away and recreate yourself to understand and start to really just understand what it is that you're watching, because watching it is one thing, it's a good way to sink it in, but you've got to practice it. It's the same with everything. I like using some kind of volume rider before compression of vocals. Yeah, 100%. That's a great one. I like doing that as well. In fact, volume rider from Waves is a good one for that. Or even you could do automation on the volume fader. Again, bits about this in the course, a lot more in depth. Thanks, little Dave. I like the word. Yeah, if people can call me Professor. Yeah. LA, I completely agree. Another thing which I basically tried to think about all the things that had annoyed me about learning, compression within mixing, and friends, mentors, sort of colleagues who do this day in day out, and all the things that are, to demystify all the terminology and all the conceptions. And one of the big ones is, you might overcompress something, even in a dry wet case, and that's because back in the studio they would have actually literally done rides on the fader, and that's a really, really great way to do it in the digital domain. So you can do it with just, clicking and writing your automation in. You can do it with a plugin like Vocal Writer. You could literally get a control surface, but doing that before compression can help. Again, it depends on the source that you're working with. Some vocals won't need that, but I find that it can be really helpful. Yeah, good point. So we're going to start implementing some of these things in action soon. I'm going to be mainly using FabFilter stuff, Arturia stuff. You can grab all of this on the ADSR website, by the way. And I've got a couple of special tools on the main output there from Plugin Alliance, which is SPL Iron and Brainworks Townhouse. One of them is basically for mid-side, one of them is for bus compression. If you have any more questions, keep them rolling in, and I'll make a start to illustrate some of these. I'm just going to take a quick sip of H2O. Hope everyone's having a good Sunday. This is a sort of new slot for us to try out, so hope everyone's had a good weekend, made the most of it, and ready for next week. Don't forget we have sound design sessions tomorrow if you want to learn about sound design. Again, another hour of this at 7 for the UK, and I think that's 10 for our friends on the West Coast. That's true, I've seen quite a few of those memey descriptions as to what compressor parameters do. Yeah, there's a great one, and it's like, isn't it something like about your mother and how you can, the threshold is when she tells you, and then the ratio is the amount that you there's some great memes like that. Yeah, it's hilarious. Okay, so what I'm going to start off with first of all is, thanks Dave, are you off? Thanks for tuning in. What I'm going to start off with here is a vocal of a well-known song. Here we go. So this is Ain't No Sunshine, sung horrifically by yours truly. But this is a really common thing when I've worked with vocalists in the past is the more that you work with, the more that, so for example, a vocalist works in a studio environment, the better they'll get with their mic technique and in terms of understanding how to deliver on the performance. But if you're working with people who haven't had as much experience, you're going to find that their vocal can be really dynamic. By that, mate, I'm talking about peaks and troughs. And a great way to do it is to, the people always say, mix with the ears, not with your eyes. And I couldn't agree more, but I also couldn't agree less. I feel like the importance of seeing things makes a huge difference. I've got this TC visualizer thing, and it's sort of like shape of an iPad. And basically it tells me about stereo field stuff, but visually. And that really helps. So I think don't be put off when people say don't use your eyes, use your ears. Use both. You should definitely, if it sounds good, it is good is the principle. But definitely use both. And what I mean by that is if I'm looking at this, I can see, whoa, we're almost clipping in terms of headroom. And wow, some of this stuff is really, really quiet. So the performance here is going to be really just inconsistent. It won't fit well in a mix, etc., etc. There's loads and loads of things you can get into here. And like, I think it was LA was talking about vocal automation before compression in the course. There's a chapter where I talk all about that as well. So a good way to tame a vocal like this is to use a FET compressor. Reason being, the reason that I like to use a FET is for a particular reason. Let me just try and make this a bit bigger. Resize. Okay, that'll do. So the reason I like to use a FET is for a couple of reasons. FET is field effect transistor. Fancy terminology. It's this black compressor, an 1176, made famous by Yuri Universal Audio back in the day. There's a billion emulations of these. This Arturia one, in my opinion, is the best. I've got all the expensive UAD gear here, and I personally prefer this one. You've got a lot more optionality in the advanced panel. And again, we put a lot of this to use in the course. The reason I love this is it's a really, really affordable compressor. You can pick it up on the ADSR store, but also it's just super friendly to use. It's got the parallel mix built in here, which we didn't have on the UA one, and there's a lot more control. A big thing with the 1176s, controls are backwards, so you would think that this would mean really fast compression. That's not correct. It's actually backwards, and they're trying to keep it faithful to the original there, in the homage, if they will. But enough waffling. If you want to learn more about the specific types of compressors, which is a huge, huge part of compression, again, in the course I cover FET, optical, Varimu, tube, bus, digital, multiband, mid-side. I feel like there might be another techniques as well, of course, sidechain, compression, etc. But I'm using this anyway because I like the fact that this has really fast attack time. And the reason I want a fast attack time, this is sort of to answer whose question was it from before? I can't quite remember. Someone's question about, I can't hear the difference between attack and release time. Well, attack and release time makes the world of a difference on a vocal like this, because what I want to do is, if you have a look, this is so dynamic. We got bits like this, and then we got bits like this, and then bits like this. What we're going to do is we're going to level out the dynamic range to make it more consistent. And typically I would do that with more than one compressor, and that's basically cascaded or serial compression. More about that, obviously, in the course. I'm just going to touch on this one I always go to, and then I usually follow on with this with something for general leveling. But basically, this has a really fast attack and release time. It means it'll catch the peaks like these, the really harsh transients, super quick, whereas other compressors won't be able to do that. So you want to use a FET. And then what's really nice, it is imparts this character and this color onto the signal as well. Best way to understand that is to watch a sine wave test with the compressor to see the harmonic switch it adds across the frequency spectrum. But basically, I will use this on maybe like an 8 or 12 ratio, depending on the performance. And again, ratios are a bit complex to demystify right here, but again, there's more about that in the course. So what I'll do is I'll play this through and I'll start to adjust the input and output. These are linked, by the way. I typically prefer to unlink them if I'm completely honest.
Ain't no sunshine
so let's have a
when
listen.
she's gone.
Probably need decent headphones or
It's
speakers.
not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away, ain't no sunshine.
Okay. So, with that performance there's certain parts that literally almost hurt your ears, and there's certain parts which are almost, intelligible. You basically almost can't hear them. So what we got to do is get some more consistency out of this. And I'd just like to point out here that I've adjusted the level to -5.4. Typically, gain staging plays a huge role in compression, and you want to basically go into the your effects chain with headroom. Otherwise, you're going to start distorting the signal, and that's not good. So I brought down the signal. I want to keep it between sort of -6 and -12.
When she's gone.
And then we can start to use the compressor.
It's not warm when she's away.
Yeah, who doesn't love my voice?
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always.
So if we have this linked, it's automatic gain compensation. So what I'm going to do is going to drive it. I'm going to back off the output.
Too long,
so there's two ways I could go about compressing this vocal. I'll show you the first way. I'm going to give it a fast attack so it catches the transients, and I'm going to give it a slow attack, because even on a slow attack, 1176s are really, really fast.
She goes away. Ain't no sunshine when.
Yeah, sorry, I've just seen that in the chat. By the way, the quality on Twitch is astoundingly better. I checked it out a couple of weeks ago, and the quality difference it's horrible. I can't believe how bad it is on other platforms. Facebook's by far the worst. YouTube's not bad, but Twitch, it's like, you'll see me in 4K.
She's gone.
So, slow attack time, fast release basically means it's going to grab the transients slow. It means the compressor won't react to it super quick, whereas if it's over here, the compressor is going to grab the transients immediately, straight out of the gate. But what I want to do here is, because of the nature of the vocal, I want to basically compress it and grab the transient slowly, because even still 1176 is really, really super, super quick, which is what I'm looking for. But I want a slow attack and a fast release. That way, catching the transients with a natural, smooth sound, and then it's releasing, going back to the original source really, really fastly. So we're getting a really natural sound. Driving the input, as you can see, the meter's starting to move.
Not warm when she's away.
In about -3 to -5.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
So ratio, I love the
She's
descriptions that
always
Arturia do.
gone
They're
too
absolutely
long.
bang on as well. The reason I use Arturia stuff and FabFilter stuff throughout the course is the best in terms of orally, in my opinion. I think they sound great. There's no weird aliasing or phasing issues. They're resizable, which is honestly such a big deal these days. And they're great learning tools. So ratio defines the degree of compression applied to the signal once it's reached the threshold. So you can turn these on and off, by the way, if you don't want to see the tips, but they're helpful. So I like a higher ratio for one of these compressors on a vocal. It's probably about 8.
Anytime she goes away, ain't no sunshine when she.
So now this bit here, this massive peak, the compressor slams back here, and now this part is much more in line with the rest of it.
Ain't no sunshine when she.
And you see how fast it jumps back on the VU meter. If I had a faster attack time there, watch what happens.
Sunshine when she's gone.
You can hear the character that it imprints more as well when you have a faster attack time. Someone talking about that before. So this is one way I would do it, is I would be sort of light-handed. Another cool way you can do it, and it depends on loads and loads of things. It's very subjective and circumstantial. So if this was maybe the chorus and I wanted big vocals, I would do this bit differently. I would do things a lot more heavy-handed. And then what I would do is I would blend them in parallel. And basically what I'm doing there is I'm taking the original signal, I'm taking the compressed signal, and I'm blending them in one. Someone before's question was about, do I have to use bus on Pro C2? Or can I mix it? The control on that is definitely not as obvious. It's hidden away. FabFilter do great plugins, but it's all tucked away. But on here we got a clear mix control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive the input more, and I'm going to use a faster attack time, and I'm going to use a fast release time. Let's check this out, and we're going to leave the compression at 100%.
It's not warm when she's away.
So I've absolutely ruined the vocal.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
We're getting like -20. It's absolutely slamming. Nothing about it is natural anymore, and it doesn't sound good, does it? That's when you want to blend things in. So what you're doing here is you're just taking the original source and you're taking that really, really over the top version, and when you bring them side by side, you get this great I seen a funny meme the other day about someone being like the first person who discovered parallel compression, and they must have been just like, blown away. But basically, I'm going to blend the mix knob in, and I usually take it back to 0, and then I'll blend it in until it sounds good. That's the most important thing here, is get used to using your ears and just think what actually sounds good. It can be good, literally just close your eyes and adjust things and see what you think there. And another good tip from one of my favourite mixing engineers, a film score mix engineer called Alan Meyerson, said, whatever you're going to put it to, do sort of 5 to 10% less. So I might think, it sounds really good at 45, 46, for example. Okay, once you've made your decision there, just take it down by another 5%. And the reason is because later on, all of this stuff just accumulates and builds up. And then what happens is compression, cascaded compression, serial compression, it just becomes more and more. So back off more than you think. That's a really good way to think about it. So let's go with 0% and blend it.
And she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away, ain't no sunshine when she's
So that's
gone.
still a bit too transient heavy.
It's not warm when she's away.
Also, the quiet bits are starting to get much more audible, which is good. It's not just about taming the peaks, it's about bringing up the troughs, because, this bit's probably way too loud, but this bit's also way too quiet, and we need people to be able to hear the whole performance.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away.
Okay, I like that.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away.
Okay, let's do a little A/B. So I've got it tuned to about 44. What I'll do is I'll back it off. Like I said, I always find that's good, and then it would really help me down the line with other compressors that I might add in the signal. Let's do about before and after. So this is much more heavy compression, super fast attack and release times. We're nearly maxed out. Really driving the input so it's going in hot, but blending it in. It brings in a whole new version and a whole new balance to the vocal. So let's do with.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away.
After.
Ain't no
Or before.
sunshine when she's gone.
So not only can I basically not really hear this very well, this part just takes out your eardrum.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
Let's check this bit with the compressor.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone.
So there we go. I think that is a good way to demonstrate a good starting point for learning vocal compression. There's a lot more on that in the course if you're interested in that specifically. If you're not watching this live and you're catching this on our YouTube channel or anything, and you have any more questions, you can still submit them on our Discord server. I mean, the Discord is a huge, huge community, but if you put them on there, I'll be picking up questions all the time, basically. So if you tag me at Sound and Vision on Discord, I'll be more than happy to answer them if you miss this stream. So that is the vocal example. And I'm just going to get rid of the comp vet. If you can, I think a lot of the plugins used here are, oh wow, they're on sale for Black Friday. Okay, so you could really bag quite a good deal in terms of you could grab the plugins that are necessary to follow along with the course. And those plugins are some of the ones that I use day in, day out. In fact, yeah, FabFilter and Arturia stuff is just my go-to now. Honestly, I've got the UAD stuff and I really love it for the conversion, but I feel like the quality of plugins from other developers now is at a standstill. Everyone's is good, more or less. Sent via Discord. I have lots of samples, but need them to sound like one instrument. Okay. I think that the drums would be a good point for that. The drums are lots of samples. And I guess you want to make them sound like a drum kit, so we could definitely answer that. Thesimal, why we use more than one compressor in a track? Good question. I can answer that one before we go to the one from Discord. So to use more than one compressor in a track, I guess by a track you mean on a one of these tracks here rather than on a bounce of a track. So the reason we use more than one compressor is for so many different reasons. It could be for flavor and character. For example, like what I just showed there, the FET, field effect transistor, super, super quick, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. So you might want to be using it gently like I just did there, and then follow on with an optical compressor. And the reason for that is couple of reasons. Optical compressors, you don't have control over the attack and release. You just have two controls. They're really smooth because they don't have a fast attack and release time like the FET compressor. So to use that after a compressor gives you a much more smooth, cohesive sound. And again, I always like to remind people that all these tiny, tiny little things can seem tedious, but on a big scale, they make a huge, huge difference, you know? So just all these little things make a big deal. Another one is the character that it imprints onto a sample or a sound source. So for example, tube compressors, it's practically like once you drive on them, it's like sending it through a Marshall Plexi. No, I'm joking. It's like you really get a lot of tonal character from some compressors. So you might use one, for example, you might use a FabFilter Pro C2 as a really, really good analyzer, and you can really get in with controls that you don't even have on other compressors like this. And then we get even more advanced down here. But if you want to use this to maybe do the technical stuff and then use a compressor purely for just tickling the needle, by that we mean 1 to 2 dBs, but it is imprinting tonal character. That's a really, really good one. So I hope that answers your question, Thesimal. On Facebook, not sure if you can see it, so sharing here. Yes, thank you. I'm not really, the restream chat that we have for Facebook and Twitch, just, I can't scroll through it. I think it's really annoying, but yeah, please keep pasting them on here. Martin Trexham, interested to know why sometimes when looking at a waveform, then there is more sound above or below the midline. Why is that? Interested to know why sometimes when looking at a waveform there is more sound above the midline. I'm not entirely sure what you mean. Is this in relation to compression? Feel free to follow up with another, like try and specify and nail down again. Sorry if I have interpreted it wrong, but I feel like I can't directly create a link there. But I'll be happy to pick it up if you can maybe relate it more. Sorry, I just need a more specific example. So back to the Discord, I want to have lots of samples but need them to sound like one instrument. Good point. This links to someone's question before about, what was someone's question about? SSLs, do you use them on individual channels? And then someone else's question was, what about, yeah, no problem, thanks, thank you for the question, Thesimal. Someone was asking about, do you need to use compression on everything? And absolutely no, not at all. A lot of samples already been treated. But to have a collection of sounds and to try and make them sound cohesive, the way to do that is with bus compression. So I think that might be what your question's about. So for example, let's go to this drums track. Let me just loop this section. So let's have a listen to this. I mean, they sound quite cohesive. Nice levels. Again, I've adjusted everything with a bit of gain staging. But again, you could make them sound a bit more cohesive, tighter, glued, by using some form of bus compression. I'd send these to a bus. These are all going to a bus channel now. This is pretty much the only way to still do this, by the way. Or maybe you can use something like Wave Studio Rack. And then what I do is I take something like Pro C2 or SSL, like a bus compressor. And what I'll do is straight out the gate, this is probably going to ruin this because it'll overcompress it. I mean, it doesn't ruin it, it's actually got quite a good sound. But again, you could, honestly, the starting preset here is quite good. There's loads of presets here. Again, presets are a good starting point, and then I tweak them. It's just like sound design. So you could blend this in down here with mix control, or you could get a bit more refined. In the style here in Pro C2, I love the fact that we have loads of different emulations of different types of compressors. So I would use bus. It's got a slightly different knee and ratio, subtle, but again, it can make a big difference along the line. All these little things add up. And again, to try and tighten these up, I'd maybe have, I could do it in two different ways, I always think. I could do a light-handed approach with a fairly slow attack. Remember, the controls on most compressors are this way. It's just the FET one where they're backwards. Attack and release sort of around here. That way I'm not going to completely slam any transient material, and I'm not going to return to zero too quick so you get any pumping. So we're getting, reset the menu, 0.3. We need to pull back on our threshold a bit more to get a bit more cohesion, glue. Cool. So we're getting, on average, about 4 dB, 4 or 5 dB of gain reduction. So that's one way to do it, or just like before, I could really do let's just go for the fastest attack and release times and max out, so we are almost limiting, and you could pull back the threshold and this would sound probably terrible. So you're getting a massive amount of pumping here, and exaggerate even more. This is what I love about Pro C2, mixed with your ears, but also your eyes. Stuff like this is a tool that's worth using. You can also use this to just hear the compression in FabFilter Pro C2. If you don't have Pro C2, it's probably one of the best compressors to learn, practice, and implement compression forever. I feel like if there was one thing you bought to follow along in the course, make it Pro C2, because you've got all the emulations here. And if you want stuff for more character and vintage vibe, Arturia. But this lets you just hear the compression. Ready? So the snare is clearly the most dynamic thing there, isn't it? And transient heavy. So what I could do now is I could blend this in. So it went from 57 to 1 decibel. So blend the mix to about about 6 dB of gain reduction. This is grouping my samples into a bus, and let's do a before and after. If you're wearing good headphones, you'll hear quite a big difference there, to be honest. It feels to me that all those samples there are a lot more limp, there's not as much energy, and they definitely don't feel like they're part of a collection. And then once you implement something like this, there's an obvious sign of cohesion, and everything just feels really balanced. Before, after. It even changes the character of stuff like the snare. It elongates the tail on them, and the percussion, the top is quite different for sure. So I hope that answers your question about how to implement compression onto individual samples for sort of more cohesion. Looking at these samples as well, looking and listening to them, not all these would require any compression. Some of them might. Again, more on that in the course, but hopefully that sort of touches the iceberg and gives you a bit of an idea. It's thirsty work. So we got about another 15-20. If you guys have any more questions, please get them in on Twitch, Facebook, Discord, or on YouTube. Question about guitars. I'm really happy with my guitar sound. It's just too dynamic in the mids and the highs. Okay, so that to me sounds like something for quite a relatively new kid on the block in terms of compression in comparison to some of these older vintage models. Sounds like a job for a multiband compressor, and if you're happy with your guitar sound, or let's just say sound, but you feel like there's a specific frequency area which is really driving you mad, then just throwing a compressor on there is not going to do the job. That's going to compress the entire frequency of the sample. So what you got to do is you got to isolate a specific band. And again, I'm a sucker for using FabFilter for this stuff. So I think there's probably, I'm trying to think, there's probably other things you could use. Other multiband compressors, but this is probably one that I use the most. So let's check these out. Again, these are just some guitar. I've got a little bit of everything in this session, depending on what your questions are. Okay, that one is got a lot of nice tonal character, but kind of almost hurts my ears. By the way, this is actually samples that I made for a sample pack. Again, you can get this on the ADSR store, these samples. These are from Touch Loops. So it's got a lot of nice room sound on it. When I recorded these, I recorded it through really some expensive gear like Oxbox. So I don't want to take anything away from that. It's got effects printed onto it. Okay. So Pro MB. Pro MB is basically, I'll turn off these tips. Pro MB is a multi-band compressor. So what we have here is control over individual bands of the source. And this is probably the best way to answer your question in terms of how to treat a specific area of a sample. So for me, it would be completely pointless throwing a compressor on here if I want to deal with just a specific section. Again, the brilliant thing about the FabFilter stuff is we got a frequency analyzer which shows us in the background the graphic analyzer. It shows us the actual the material. So if I click here, definitely the presence in a guitar lies around sort of 3 to 5k. Going to click here and it's going to create a band. Then we have our crossover points and we can change our slopes. Again, fantastic compressor, really advanced. And again, we've got mix controls here. So I always find the best way to demonstrate and to learn and practice these things is to really do it over the top, to hear how things sound. Okay. And let's reduce the range. I've just realised none of that was working because it's on the wrong channel. The whole time thinking, wow, the range should have kicked in a long time ago. Okay, let's delete this point and let you just start again. You'll hear it straight away. Listen now. Hey, Simple Sam. Nice to have you on a Sunday and not, it's not a Monday. Okay, so you can start here and there. Bring the threshold right down. Okay. So none of this material here is getting compressed. Everything below 1700 hertz or 17k, 1700k is not getting compressed, and everything from roughly 665 upwards is not getting compressed. So I've isolated this band. I'm going to narrow down the band, and I can even compress just this band. Split EQ self-floor, is that the new one from Eventide maybe? If you're using good headphones, apologies when I turn off this compressor. I think it beautifully illustrates the point from the question on Discord. This sample is hurting my ears, and that's a prime suspect. So the multiband is a great way to sort that out. So it's the upper mids which are a bit piercing. That does a really nice job of it. Again, I prefer to always go over the top and blend in, you know. So there's an instance of how you could use something like a multiband to address issues that are specific to a dynamic issue in frequency areas. Everyone talking about split EQ. I think the split EQ maybe has, is it where it has like actual, it imprints, it uses a totally different way to look at compression, I believe. I feel like there's something else like that from another company. I've forgotten the name. But these are my go-to tools, but it's always exciting when something new comes along, am I right? So split, yeah. Great for bringing down the transients from the tonality or vice versa. Thanks for that, Self-Law. This one is a FAQ. What is mid-set compression? It scares me. Okay, big one. Very, very, very big one. But we can really, really quickly touch upon it. I'd probably go... Actually, no, I've got some sample. I was going to go back to the kit sample, but I've got these samples here. Again, just from a collection of sounds that I made a while ago. And I'll just unpack them and loop them. So some of these could do with compression individually. I can just tell that from my ears. But in terms of mid-side, very, very big can of worms, but we do address it in the course. I think it's one of the last chapters, but basically Mid-side is a way to control your stereo and your mono information independently. So this is a stereo compressor. We got channel 1 and 2 for left and right channels. It's a very, very beastly compressor of an SPL recreation. So what we can do is we can go to this MS button here, and this turns it into a mid-side compressor. If you don't have a mid-side compressor, I think there's ways using, for sure, for Studio One. You can use it in Studio One, you can use a splitter to separate different bands and stereo stuff, and likewise you can use Max for Live. The sound design sessions on a Monday are now using mostly Ableton, and I'm using this for Studio One for lots of other things. Oh, shameless plug. Split EQ is on sale for Black Friday. Oh, I didn't even know that was on the ADSR store. Don't have that one yet. Might quickly grab that before the weekend is over. So back to the question of the mid-side. So basically you're taking independent control of mid-side, mono and stereo. Here's just channel 1 and channel 2. Basically, this is a great thing if you want to maybe impact more compression on your sides than your mids or vice versa. So the way I use this is I might want to tighten up my low end, and low end should be down the center. You don't want to have anything above 100 Hertz coming out the sides, otherwise you've got real mixing issues. And you can even do stuff like Mono Maker here. So what I'll do is I'll roll off everything up to 100, and this means that there's not going to be any frequencies above 100 in the stereo field, because you're going to have horrible phasing issues if you have stuff like that. Also, it's completely unnecessary. So Mono Maker, anything like that, is basically kick, sub, bass. And that means that now anything mono is going to be below 100 Hertz, and using mid-side compression, I can basically compress just the mono stuff. So if you turn off the prominent link, now you can basically control the sides slightly differently. So you might want to compress, say, the mids a lot more than the sides. And we're tickling the needle for the stereos, but in this condition, I actually think the stereo field is what needs more addressing. A lot of lag with this plugin. Because the low end's already quite tight. Without it, really go over the top. Fastest attack. Okay, and we feel like we've lost all of our stereo because it's pinning it so much, so you can bring back everything with a parallel mix. So we're covering multiple topics here of mid and side, just touching the iceberg. And again, parallel mix, we've touched a lot of stuff about that, but hopefully that kind of answers your question. A couple more questions here. What's the best source for sidechain compression? The kick the bass is competing with, or a muted sample that's faster? Good question, BC. So what you mean by a muted sample is maybe if you have like a silent track, or you have something like maybe white noise, which is not actually emitting audio, it's muted, but you're using it as a trigger. What's the best source for sidechain compression? It really, really is so subjective. Depends on your track, the genre. If you make an EDM, it's got to be the kick. If it's a different type of music, like something like jazz, you're going to still need to implement compression, but you're probably not going to need to implement sidechain compression on, for example, material like jazz, you know, stuff where the compression doesn't have to be as dramatic. But again, it's so subjective, that one. I feel like it would have to be applied to a really specific set of tracks. I always use an 808 kit because its shake is quite good. I'm not sure if that is the right way. It's great to try things like that. 808 kick is probably a fantastic sidechain source. I would say that for sidechain compression, I've always used compressors in the past as sidechain, But now, more than ever, I'm using stuff like Cable Guy's Volume Shaper. I'm aware it's not a compressor, but you can use it in a way that you can have greater shape over the actual ADSR and the VCA than you would if you were using a compressor. So just a little thing there is more than ever now I'm using stuff. Think of Cable Guy's Volume Shaper as like a super advanced kickstart, the Nicky Romero one, which I also think they sort of own now because I think it comes with Shaper Box Bundle. Again, available on the ADSR site. Think they mean trigger. Yes. Oh, it's like a separate. Yeah, see, everyone's got their own way. Lots more versatile. Again, you get more versatility with that way. I would absolutely agree with you. I think depending on what you're doing, the most versatile way is probably actually use something like a volume shaper on the track, depending if you need that level of versatility. Maybe I'm looking at this more from a sound design part than a mixing part, but for me, I prefer to do that. It's quicker and a lot more intuitive, but I still use sidechain compression. Hopefully that answers your question. My last question, if you get to it, I feel like I missed a question. Sorry if I'm when I compare my mix to other professional tracks, it's like there's something missing that makes the track sound more polished. Is this compression? Oh, okay, I've seen this one come in through the week on Discord. If you're not on Discord, you can get questions in early for our streams, so please go and join that. It's completely free, massive community. I believe people in this chat are already on it, and I'll be there to answer questions after this stream ends if you've missed the stream. But I do remember seeing this one come through the week, and I think what you're referring to is more or less a multiband expansion, other words OTT, XFIR OTT. It's basically a way of, I've got a good example with this. So the plug here, let's check this out. Let's solo this. I'll get rid of the iron. So the plug here, let's have a listen. Just bring it to level. So I remember when I discovered OTT, it was like a bomb went off in my brain in terms of that was what I was trying to get all those years. OTT was a preset created in Ableton by XFIR for their multiband compressor, and it meant over the top. It was used by people like Skrillex and Dubstep for like these really crazy sounds, and it's actually gone on to be probably one of the most used modern day effects and plugins. Also, it's free. This is free. I have the OTT in Ableton. It's obviously native to Ableton. If you're not, then you can grab this for free. Again, I believe even this is on the ADSR store. So I think what you're talking about is multiband upwards compression. So that's where you can do that with FabFilter Pro MB, by the way. Let me show you. Just in case someone wants more control, you can do it with Pro MB. Go into expansion mode and change the range for a positive decibel level, and then you're going to actually do the opposite multiband, which is what OTT is more known for. So I find that OTT is awesome. I love it, but you get phasing issues if you go a little bit too high up. Nice little tip there from Fox Stevenson. It's audible as well, but basically use this at a small percentage on the depth control, adjust your high, mid and levels, and you'll get a really fantastic sound from it, but just be careful with that depth control. So let me show you. So it's done so many things to it. It's gave it more energy. It's made the transients more, like a lot more, just more energy really. Perceived loudness has gone up, but before and after. It's almost like there's been an EQ on it. Because it is an EQ almost. So what I would do here is I would adjust my bands. Let's get rid of the highs. It's a brilliant tool for sound design. I hope that maybe answered your question. Again, that's on the Discord. If you've liked this live stream, please like and subscribe to the channel. coming in the new year, I think we'll probably be doing one of these on a Sunday each month potentially. And if you found that you've enjoyed this stream and you want to learn more about the course is actually available right now on the site. Link to it is in the chat, and I believe it's on a discount, an intro discount, and also all the tools that I use in the course are also on a Black Friday discount on ADSR. So your one-stop shop for everything here. In terms of the samples, the plugins, the course, it's all on this site. Okay, I'll pick up one more question. We're out of time, but I'm happy to answer. Yeah, the Sunday streams is, I think, we've had a decent number of people tune in and a lot of questions for which is good. So what was the other question? There was one I missed. What's the best source for Sidechain? I've done that one. Hi, what would you say is the best way to sidechain? The best way to sidechain is the best way that works for you, honestly. I was talking about this just before, and Simple Sam had a great response that he likes to use basically a trigger, like a separate sidechain. You can do that. You can use a kick. You can use any sample or sound source you like, or you can use tools that are not actually compressors to give the effect of compression, because compression with sidechain is basically reshaping the ADSR, the envelope of the sound source. Stuff for that is Kickstarter, good, sort of simple one, great if you just want to go with it and just be done with it. Volume Shaper from Shaper Box. Cable Guys is probably the best thing I can think of for taking control of stuff like that. So we're out of time, guys. If you have more questions, get them in on the Discord, and I'll be more than happy to answer them on there throughout the week. If you've missed this and you're watching it there, please just, more than welcome to tune in on Discord, and I'll pick them up as I see them. Tag me at Sound and Vision, and then I can see them on, all my devices. Otherwise, I won't know that you've asked me a question. So I hope that you found this useful. If you've enjoyed it, please go and check out the course. Like I said, everything's basically on intro discount, and we have the Black Friday deals going on. Thanks, Schools Cube. Again, if you have more questions, please join our community on the Discord. It's completely free. It's not just about the compression course, by the way. It's about all of the different streams, all of the different tutorials here at ADSR. So thanks a lot for watching. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed this and you're new, tomorrow night I'll be back for our sound design sessions live stream, which is basically all about sound design, and we'll be creating and shaping sounds with a brand new tool from Cherry Audio, some free presets. Another thing that we do is when we get our hands on some new stuff, always try and create a collection of free presets for ADSR community. So I'll catch you guys tomorrow. If you want any more information about this, head over to the ADSR website to check out our new compression course. Just check in the comments before I go. Thanks again, everyone. BC, Martin, Cools, Simple Sam. 10 p.m. now here. Yeah, I think we could maybe push it back 1 hour earlier is what we're potentially thinking, but this has been great fun. I hope you've all had a great weekend, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. See you later, guys.